Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here with Stephen Countryman from Frost Bank Trust Department. We've been talking about trustees and trust assets, and now we're going to talk about some different kinds of trusts. What's one type of trust that Frost Bank is good at taking care of?
Well, one that I particularly enjoy working on with families are special needs trusts. A lot of folks come into the bank and they've had a lot of sleepless nights because their child is getting older and they're getting older, and they either don't have any other children or family members to help take care of them, or the ones that the other children they have don't live nearby and can't. And so they're looking for a solution to that. And they'll come to Frost and say, well, can you help us with this? Can you take care of our child who's got special needs? And the answer is yes, we do. We're very good at it. We have an administrator, Ellen Parsons, who specializes in that area. She goes to all the CLEs. She keeps up to date because, of course, the goal of a special needs trust is to keep them qualified for government benefits and not disqualify them, but also support them in ways that will keep their life basically the way that it was while their parents were alive. People are worried when you have a child with, MHMR, something that is going to make it to where they can't be, in society and working and taking care of themselves, driving. But that worry can go away because, so long as there's sufficient finances to support them in a trust, Frost is really good at it. And we have all the connections in town to get medical teams and ascertain what their capacity is and what kind of day-to-day care they need and how they can go and if they're on bowling teams or if they're going to church and making sure all those things are facilitated. We do that, and it can get a little messy because of how the government can get involved and prohibit certain distributions or certain benefits, I should say. But that's our job, is to make sure that we don't ever get them disqualified from that. So I do enjoy meeting with those families because I think we often see quite a bit of relief when they know that there is somebody who's going to take care of their child. So those are great ones. And then the marital trusts are huge. I only say this kind of half joking, but we often call second marriages with children from a prior marriage, we just call it litigation. Something's going to come up, and it's not always the case, but it's not uncommon. And what to do with your estate. So what you often see is the husband leaving a trust, or either spouse, but the husband often
Usually the husband dies first.
Right, exactly. And so they're leaving behind.
You know why? Because they have wives.
No comment. My wife's probably listening. So they leave behind assets in trust to benefit their spouse. And then when that spouse passes, the assets pass to their children. So it's a great formula,
Right. Take care of your spouse and then make sure that it doesn't get diverted somewhere else, that it ends up finally with your biological children.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great idea. The concern that often arises is what happens if the wife is named or the surviving spouse is named as trustee. Then you get some fighting. And there's legendary court cases going on at this moment that have been going on for decades about.
But you have to realize that the married couple really struggles with this. I have them. I imagine them in front of me right now, just watching the wheels turning as I'm saying. Spouse can be trustee, or you can name a bank, and here's some of the reasons why you would want to do that. The surviving spouse or the other spouse they're imagining that they're going to be the surviving spouse is scared to death that for some reason they're not going to have access to the funds.
Yeah, exactly. I think the bank is maybe best worst option is not the way to phrase it, but if the other two options are either name the wife or name a child, then a bank is a great option because the bank is going to be unbiased.
Right.
And they're going to adhere to the terms of the document. They're going to look at what the wife's standard of living is and try to adhere to that as well. And principal distributions are going to be limited to what's only appropriate. Now, if the wife's in charge, she might think that a new house and a new car and maybe a car for a child from a prior marriage, something like that. Those sorts of things that could start litigation. That would be, kind of worst case scenario. Then on the other hand, if you name one of your children as trustee for the spouse, they have an interest in preserving the principal.
Right.
And so they're going to probably restrict distributions. That's just human nature. Not to say they absolutely surely would, but we see it all the time. So having a third party in there that's not biased, I think is critical to those relationships. We have a lot of those marital trusts that we bank.
And that would likely keep the peace between the two of them. Because during life, the step parent and the stepchild, they might have a good relationship, but after the death, the person that was the glue between those relationships can disappear, and then it's all about money.
Todd, that's it exactly. Unfortunately, that is the case. We see it so often, even with children that have grown up together, and when mom dies, that's the dam breaking, and all of a sudden the old wounds come back, and everybody's fighting over the soup spoon.
Right.
And having a bank in there to determine who's going to get what and to equalize things, it makes things. It's worth the fee, in my opinion.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to destroy a family relationship just by leaving an inheritance to somebody. I think that if people are going to hate each other, they can all gang up on the bank.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we'll be the bad guy. And it is also, not impossible, but it's a lot harder to sue a bank. It's a lot more, not to say it's, again, not impossible, and it shouldn't be impossible, but for frivolous things,
right?
It's not going to be motivated by anger. It will be motivated by actual damages, which is right. And then I guess we could talk about, living trusts, which are a common technique that people use to deal with incapacity issues. Now in 2017, the legislature passed a law allowing power of attorneys to create rev trusts, which has been wonderful. We've been using that. Not a lot of banks have leaned into that, but Frost has. And but the old structure is the classic living trust, which, the person is the trustee for their life, but in the event of incapacity, the successor trustee is there to take care of them and take care of their assets, which, it used to be that you get, added protection for privacy and all these things and avoid probate, which is still true.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite as true as it used to be, but that incapacity protection is critical, especially for folks who don't have children or their children aren't nearby to take care of them. That's where those revocable living trusts are really beneficial. That's a huge part of our business.
Or even in the same situation where you have children that don't get along or that don't have a level of sophistication as the parent, that could become an opportunity for like a pre-death will contest where the family members are fighting each other for control, even if they don't get to have the money right away. Somehow the human psyche, it favors control.
Yep, that's right. We've just seen so many families fall apart at that end, and if Rost had been involved or if corporate fiduciary had been involved from the beginning, I think that there would have been they would have been able to salvage it. But unfortunately, once money's involved, there's just nothing that could stop some of the fighting that would occur. Unfortunately, so it's a nasty world, and I'll tell you, people are just not ready to serve or deal with probate if they're not in that world. I wish it was a class that was taught in high school right alongside home ec. It's like, well, this is the basics to serving as a executor or trustee, because 50% of us probably will at one point.
Yeah, well, plus I think that there's something that happens to a person when they lose a loved one. It's like getting hit in the head with a steel bar. You're just somewhat unconscious for a period of time until you recover.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, you need to get time to grieve. And oftentimes if you're serving as executor, you don't have that. you need to
how do you
compartmentalize it.
manage royalties and real estate and stocks, bonds, and mutual funds that might be subject to volatility when you're partially unconscious due to the loss of a loved one?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and I think that's a huge benefit. There are folks who come in and name Frost Bank, and they have lawyer children. In fact, there's one that I'm thinking of now, incredibly big name lawyer in town, who is one of the smartest people I know. But the mother decided, well, let's just have Frost do it. He's too busy. He's too busy to do it.
Yeah. Well, I missed my opportunity to talk about sinners and saints, so we'll pick that up in just a minute. And then we'll talk about legacy next segment too, because you have a great story for that. But I also wanted just for you to talk briefly about how does the bank make a decision to make a distribution if it's based on discretion?
Great question. So we have an advisory committee, and when distributions over a certain amount are requested by a beneficiary, and you have to keep in mind most trusts have that health, education, maintenance, and support language that prohibits or restricts distributions. So what does maintenance and support mean? Well, it's pretty broad. So we use our committee, which has all this experience from dozens and dozens of years of working in the industry, and they will make that decision. And normally it's a conservative one.
Great. Well, we've been talking about what it's like to have a corporate trustee today with Stephen Countryman from Frost Bank. There's more. Stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.